Hi, I'm Bob Thaler, Extension Swine Specialist here. Do a little bit of teaching and a little bit of research is included. And so when you look at it, some of the things I'm going to talk about are research, but they're pretty applied, and it's really looking at my extension component. And the three things I want to talk about today. First, are kind of give an update on the above ground burial. Secondly, talk about a hybrid rye trial that we did, and also give you an update on the virtual operation Mainstreet. That's pretty unique here to SDSU. When I think about the above ground burial project, basically I call that the Swine Day project. Its inception came in the Swine Day of 2018. Dave Preisler from Minnesota Pork came up. We started visiting about it, and that was the impetus to get going on it. At last year's Swine Day, we gave 6-month update on it. This year, we have most of our data, and come Thursday, when it's a beautiful 72 degrees out, we're going to be out pulling out the test wells and the conduit and the thermocouple, so that part of the project will be done. But again, just looking at it, and again, above ground burial is a way to handle mortalities. It's kind of a combination between deep burial and composting, something that producers can do on a farm with a lot of extra equipment. Again, we really want to thank our sponsors for that. Minnesota Pork, South Dakota Pork, Iowa Pork, Nebraska Pork, and the South Dakota Soybean Research and Promotion Council. So thank you guys for your support of that project. And so just a recap of the SDSU trial, basically it was a 2x2 factorial arrangement. We wanted to see how above ground burial worked in both warm and cold weather, and also whether or not we could use wood chips or corn stalks. Gary Flory from Virginia came up with the idea. Obviously a lot more wood chips available there, and that's what he used. But in South Dakota, we're blessed with a lot of corn stalks, so we wanted to see how that worked. And again, each of those pits were 8 feet wide, 60 feet long, 22 inches deep. And the things that we measured in this trial were carcass temperature, carcass decomposition, and also we used Seneca Valley virus as a sentinel virus for African swine fever. And we looked at Seneca Valley virus levels in the carcasses and the wood chips, corn stalks, as well as in the water samples. Because the other question that we had is not only will the carcasses decompose, but what happens with the leachate? Okay, so are we going to contaminate the groundwater supply? So again, in the African swine fever situation, the last thing we'd want to do is have that active virus get in the aquifer and basically contaminate everywhere. And so just to refresh, this is what the two test plots look like. We have our corn stalks right there with 3 test wells, 3 different test well sections, so 6, 18, and 36 inches. The next slide, what you're seeing, we're looking at the June burial, okay? And that would be the temperature of the carcasses. Blue is going to be those that were placed on corn stalks, and yellow the ones on wood shaving. And initially, you can see that we have higher temperatures with the wood chips. We get in the cold weather, it kind of goes down. It starts warming up close, but wood chips are still better. Probably one of the most interesting things that happened in the trial is in this slide. So if you look on the green half on the left, it says wood chips. And then those are the water samples for looking at Seneca Valley virus using PCR counts and at the different levels. And on the right, or the light blue, would be the ones with corn stalks. And the interesting thing that you see is we got on the wood chips, we found a lot of Seneca Valley virus in water, okay, which at first was really pretty scary. I didn't see much, only one sample initially on corn stalks, but the big fear was if we're seeing the Seneca Valley virus leach into the groundwater, that pretty much negates the use of this project. When we started looking at it, it never got down to 36 inches. The farthest the Seneca Valley virus went down was 18 inches. So we saw some at 6 and we saw some at 18. So that was a little encouraging. A close collaborator in this project is Dr. John McMain from Ag and Biosystems Engineering. And John also looked at E. coli concentrations that we would see in the leachate. And interesting, for the early on and the left peaks, you can see we had higher levels from carcasses on the corn stalk. Halfway through that flipped, and so we saw some fairly high E. coli levels based on the carcasses that were on wood chips. Next slide looks at nitrate leachate, and again, initially there was more nitrate from the test wells where the carcasses were above corn stalks. Okay, so this is what it looked like a week after Swine Day last year. Just a beautiful winter day in South Dakota. And so again, we had 44 mortalities in each of those pits, and then we covered them up with the fill dirt. And it was very similar to what we saw in the June. So again, the blue is going to be the carcasses that were placed on wood chips, and you can see early on that the slightly higher temperatures for the animals that were composted on the wood chips. The next slide is probably the most important one. And so when you look at PCR, all PCR tells you is that genetic material is there. It doesn't tell you if it's a whole virus there, if the virus is dead, the virus is alive, just that something's there. So in order to tell if the positive PCR samples for Seneca Valley virus excuse me, that we saw in our test wells, in tissues, and the cornstalks wood chips, was there actual viable virus there? So what we did in vet science, we took 24 weaned pigs, and we took the actual samples of water, of body tissue, of carbon sources that tested PCR positive for Seneca Valley virus, and we injected it in the pigs. We gave them oral inoculation and injections of it, and watched what happened. And the great news was, and this was probably the best thing about this whole trial, is none of those pigs seroconverted. So while, yes, we detected genetic material based on the pig bioassay, none of it was infective. So again, when we look at this, we feel pretty comfortable that above ground burial is certainly a viable way to handle mortalities. Next trial that we did down at the Southeast Farm, we did a finishing trial using hybrid rye. And one of the reasons there's getting to be a lot of interest in cover crops, and certainly hybrid rye is one of the more popular ones used out there. And when we look at it, actually, hybrid rye is pretty popular as a feedstuff in Europe, and it has similar feeding value to corn. A little higher in fiber, about 2% less oil, but when you look at amino acids and everything else, very similar. And so some of the other benefits to having a hybrid rye in your crop rotation, it gives you that third crop. Certainly good from a disease control standpoint. Hybrid rye can go up to about 100 bushels an acre. And if you were thinking about the fall of 2019, one of the good things about hybrid rye, it's harvested in August, so that spreads out your harvest season. So you don't have to get everything done in a short period of time. But again, if you're harvesting in August, that means you can start manure application in some of those fields by then. So it really spreads out the workload in the farm as well. And so what we did a trial at the Southeast Farm, 3 phases. The first phase was from 90 to 140 pounds. And so basically we replaced corn in the diet with hybrid rye. And so in this first phase, we looked at replacing corn either at 0, 17, 33, or 50%. So that last treatment was 50% corn, 50% rye for that segment. We look at phases 2 and 3. Basically, it was up to 100% replacement. So either 0, 33, 67, or 100% replacement of the corn in the diet with hybrid rye. And we want to especially thank KWF Cereals for their support of our research program. Okay, so phase 1, when we take a look at this, we've got on the left, it would be 0 in blue, 17 in yellow, 33 in green, and 50 in the other blue. And when we look at average daily gain, average daily feed intake, and feed efficiency, there were no differences as affected by level of rye inclusion. When we look at the next phase, and again, 0, 33, 67, and 100% replacement of the corn with rye, exact same thing. There were no differences in gain, in feed intake, and feed efficiency. When we look at the last growth phase from 210 to 265 pounds, gain was unaffected, but we did see an increase in feed intake. And part of that is due to the slightly lower energy levels, higher fiber levels that we see in rye, and that probably resulted in a little bit higher feed intake. And we did see a change in feed intake, or excuse me, feed efficiency as well as that last level. When we look at the overall growth performance, basically no difference in gain or feed intake, and just a slight worsening of feed efficiency at that high level. So in summary, we look at hybrid rye, basically in the first 2 phases, we can replace 100% of the corn with rye and not affect growth performance. In phase 3 and cumulative, again, we can use 100% rye without affecting gain, but it may make them less efficient because feed intake was increased. Some of the future things that we're going to look at its impact on carcass quality, certainly fat color, fat softness, as well as gut microbiota. The last thing I want to talk about, something really is fun, and all the credit goes to our students. Basically, Operation Mainstreet. I know Steve Romerheim's on there. He's done some Operation Mainstreet. Paul, Brad Greenway, a lot of different people have done it. And it's a way producers sharing that message, just like our speaker talked about this morning, having farmers talk about pork production increases the credibility. And so what happened, and this is pretty unique to SDSU, we started a virtual Operation Mainstreet. It actually started in 2016. Maddie Schaefer, who is now Maddie Hokinson, was one of 3 young pig farmers of tomorrow in 2016. They each have to have a project. And so Maddie thought it'd be a good idea at our swine unit to create a video talking about shower in, shower out. Again, people want to know about biosecurity, and so she did a great job. And if you know Maddie, she's probably one of the most happy, charismatic people I've ever known, and the video was great. And so after that, Ernie Barnes from the National Pork Board and Al Edson from Edison and Associates thought, hey, why don't we try doing this virtually, making a virtual tour out of it. So on December 7th, 2017, Maddie gave a virtual tour of the SDS Swine Unit to the Miami Valley Career and Technical Center in Ohio, and it went great. And each year it's grown. So in fact, from August 19 to August 2020, it's grown. So now we have 6 tour guides and who are SDSU students giving more than 50 tours a year. And this next shot is a picture of Caitlin Zemer. She was one of Crystal's students, just graduated, and she was one of our Rockstar tour guides. And so basically what it is, the students head down to Des Moines, they go through a 2-day training with National Pork Board on Operation Mainstreet, and then they give the tours. And they're about 10 minutes long, and so they go in there with their cell phone and basically give a live tour of it. You can see Caitlin's got her Go Stick and her phone, talking about the difference in housing between individual stalls and large pens. Really exciting as the program grows. So again, this was in this last year, there were 51 tours given across the country in 22 different states from our swine unit that affected over 1,600 people. So again, and Dr. Cassidy talked about it a little bit this morning, the swine unit opened in 2016, and some of the things that's happening, not only from the research and the teaching side, but things like this are really pretty cool, and we're excited about them. You take a look at the next slide, and basically that's what it looks like if you're in a convention center. So you're sitting in there at a dietetics conference, and now they flick the switch, and you're seeing a live pork production, a swine system where you get to talk about it. We have a lot of vet colleges and clubs that actually take the tours, community colleges and high schools, Rotary clubs in California, Maine, and Wyoming. And again, 2 really critical groups that we get a lot of them for would be the Association of Nutritionists and Food Service Professionals and clinical nurses in care, because those people make a lot of recommendations. So it's important they understand what happens in swine operations. Family Consumer Sciences, actually the North Dakota Livestock Association Summit had us there in January, and Logan Test did a great deal on Facebook. I think over 5,000 hits on a virtual tour. The next slide is, we don't really have time, so I'm not going to cover it. Dr. Samuel is going to have these slides on there on the website, and so go ahead and hit that, and you'll see Caitlin give a great tour, and so you can see why we're so excited. So with that, I just want to thank you for your support. It's been an interesting year, but again, as Crystal and Ryan and Jeff and Shufei will talk about, there's a lot of really cool things happening here, and it's exciting to see what's going to happen next year. So thank you for your support. The one last comment I'm going to make, so the people that are involved with the Swine Advisory Council, click onto the Zoom link I sent you this morning, and we'll start there at 3. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Shufei right now.
One question before you go. Question, what percentage of corn did you value the rye for on the energy?
Yep.
energy number?
Yep, so we just, we did it at a pound for pound replacement. So we didn't do it on an isocaloric thing, we did it on a pound for pound replacement.
Okay, thank you.